We're going to jump right into our presentation, but I wanted to make sure that you saw what's up on the board, which is homework for next week. So in your packet that I gave you at the beginning, the blue folder, there's a section where you can write down homework, so it'd be great if you could write that down. So I want you to hand in a rough draft for the first 3 sections of the business plan. So there's the executive summary, you don't have to worry about that yet. Skip to the description, the target market, and the competition. So you'll type that up and hand it in next week. And then, as I just explained, we're gonna have breakout groups at the end with mentors, and I've chosen which mentors you're gonna work with. So other than that, when we'll get to that sheet that's on your desk, we'll get to that at the end too. So right now, I would like to just introduce our special guest, Phyllis Webb, who is the owner of the Magic Fluke Ukulele Company in Sheffield. So she's a local entrepreneur. And she's going to tell the story of her business, and you'll get a kind of, just like when we saw Maddie from Hosta Hill, you'll get a picture of the whole business, not just marketing or just any one part, but the whole thing. So thanks, Phyllis, for coming.
Thanks for having me. It's great to be here. I was here last year and thought it was a marvelous class, and have been looking forward to coming back. So hopefully we can inspire one another. When we think of entrepreneurship, I'll be handing out a couple of things at the end, and one of the things I did was I put together a bunch of quotes. I surfed a little for some entrepreneur quotes that I thought that I could really relate to. And the first one I just thought I'd share to kick things off. The critical ingredient is getting off your butt and doing something. It's as simple as that. A lot of people have ideas, but there are a few who decide to do something about them now. Not next week, but today. The true entrepreneur is a doer, not a dreamer. And that is Nolan Bushnell, don't know him, is an entrepreneur himself. And I just thought, kind of an interesting way to think about it. If you want to be an entrepreneur, if you want to start a business, you've got to do it. It takes courage. And I thought I'd start really, Alice was wondering if I could share a little bit about our business. And it's kind of a fun story. In 1998, my husband lost his job. He had a big engineering position. They were downsizing, bringing in lots of young people. And it was one of his happier days, although I was a little nervous about it myself. He was in the corporate world as an engineer, and he hated working for the what we call the corporate machine, which everybody has to go through that process. Some don't, but getting out there, getting experience. But he was an innovator. He was a designer. He wanted to create things, not push people. And so it was a great day. At the same time, my brother, who worked for Billboard magazine, you all have heard the Billboard charts, the big music charts, he had a really big job with them. And about 25 years ago, he moved to California, to their California office, but he was on a plane a lot. And I always tell people, he never liked to go on business trips leaving his wife home, but he hated leaving his guitar home even more. He was a guitarist and a composer, had done quite well. And the guitar just doesn't fit in the overhead bin or underneath the seat in front of you on the airplane. And so when they moved to LA, he went to a flea market and he fell in love with the ukulele. Now, ukuleles were so not cool 25 years ago, 24 years ago. Nobody even really knew what it was anymore. People remembered the Tiny Tim, and you guys might not have heard of him. He sang with a falsetto, and he's the one who sort of ruined the joy of the ukulele, some might say. But the ukulele really had a heyday. There were a couple of phases in the 20s and then the 40s, 50s, where the ukulele was huge. And then it just fell out of favor. And so he found this collectible ukulele, and he picked it up and he said, I can do with 4 strings what I've been doing with 6 all of my life. And now I can put it in the overhead bin, put it under the seat in front of me, and take it everywhere. And thus, his passion, and you'll hear a thread of the word passion. When we talk about business, when we talk about doing things, you really have to have passion. You'll hear 3 words: passion, patience, perseverance. And he had a passion, and he decided to look for music for the ukulele, and really nothing existed. And as a composer, he thought, you know what, maybe I'll write some songs on the ukulele and see if I can dig up some old sheet music. And he started writing songbooks. And he's been doing that now, and I think has probably topped selling over 1 million titles with his songbooks, which is pretty impressive. And shortly after he got in the groove and we started selling his songbooks for him, he thought, you know, why don't we, would you make a ukulele? He looked at my husband, he said, Dale, you're an engineer, let's make a ukulele. Sure. So, another word, it was a need, or a perceived need. We thought, gosh, what a great idea. Everybody needs to play ukulele. And what was sort of the thinking, it fell out of favor, why? But music is important. It's the universal language. Everybody needs it. Everybody approaches it in different ways. Some people sing, some people listen, some people play, whether you're in bands, orchestras, whether you play on your own. Music is essential, I think, to all of our lives. And the other thing that was neat about this is the ukulele is the easiest instrument in the world to learn. The Guinness Book of World Records once suggested that, and we totally agree. And it's affordable. When we think of, some of you are in band, some of you are playing other instruments. Instruments are expensive. A ukulele can be a more affordable instrument. So my husband went about researching and found a Mario McAferry, who was a really interesting guy and very innovative in plastics. He was the first to make plastic clothespins. And he was so enamored with plastics, but music was his passion, so he decided to make all plastic instruments. And at one point sold 9 million plastic ukuleles. And so my husband, who has an expertise in injection molded products and wood, decided, if we're going to make a ukulele, very critical, we want to make it here. So it has to be material that we can get here. It has to be easy to make. And so why don't we combine injection molded products and wood to make something that's quality, that is easy to assemble and put together, and be competitive in the market. So our instrument that we have now is called the Fluke. We actually have several instruments, but our first instrument was called the Fluke ukulele. And the idea was to create an injection molded back shell so that when you think of guitars and ukuleles, you think of sort of that shape. And he thought, well, if we do a different shape, you have to get the sound, the acoustic sound, and the resonance, and so forth. We can do it with a molded back shell. It's a special formula of plastics and a little bit of glass. A wood soundboard. We use a molded fretboard, molded bridge. And we could make many of these and make it affordable in the market and make it here and get our suppliers as local as possible. And I just always think it's kind of fun. This is what it looks like now. And this is what it looked like pretty much from the beginning. But this is the first one that was baked in our oven.
Your home oven.
So there was this idea. He had 2 babies. We had just built a house. He was out of a job, and he went right to work. So you got to do it today. You got to do it now. For him, it was out of necessity. And there was a love for suddenly having this ability to design anything he wanted. And so it's just kind of fun to see, as you think about businesses, whether it's your own or somebody else's, the idea had to start from somewhere. And it doesn't look like this from the beginning. There's a lot of trial and error. And you just have to keep persevering. You have to keep going forward. Take that idea, scrap some of them, go back, and till you get something that really works. So just a little bit more about our business. We started in the basement of our house. We made about $10,000 in our basement. We then made another $30,000 in another little shop in New Hartford, Connecticut, where we lived at the time. And 5 years ago, we came to what we think is the most magical place, your home, called the Berkshires. And so we now make them here. Now, the interesting thing is, when we first started making ukuleles and we were at the first music trade show, we knew nothing about what we were doing. And we went and we had our prototypes. They didn't look quite like this, but they didn't quite look like this either. And we were ready to sell. And people laughed at us because nobody was playing ukulele. Nobody was going to play this because it looked different. And it was a very interesting time. But little by little, people picked it up and heard how it sounded, and they loved the sound, and they realized that it had a lot of potential. And so we took orders. But I'll tell you, in 1999 was our first trade show where we were selling to the music world, the music industry. And I think it was probably 2 or 3 years where we were almost the only ukulele people. But we persevered. We were persistent. We were patient. And today, we've just come back from the NAMM show, which is every year in California in January. There are 1,700 booths, about 100,000 people from all over the world come. And I would say 80% of the booths have a ukulele in them because it's exploded. We were sort of at the forefront of this total interest in the ukulele. It's bigger than any of us, and it keeps growing because people realized, again, affordability, easy to play, and a fun instrument. So I guess what I'm sharing is we took a chance. Nobody was doing anything like this. Nobody was playing. We were just going totally against the tide. It looked different, it felt different, but it offered a beautiful sound, and it has a lot of personality. So a couple of things. When we think about business in general, we think about our passion for not only making our own instruments, but a passion for making things here. And when you think about a product or a service and what makes you stand out, do you have a story to tell? A little bit about you. In other words, if you're developing something, it's not just a product, just a commodity, just something to buy, but it makes it more interesting if there's a story there. And one of the things that we've thought has resonated with a lot of people is the fact that look at all the things you're wearing. Your notebooks, your shoes, your clothing, the things you use at home. One of the things I like to inspire people to do with talks like this is next time you're shopping, check out where things are made. I mean, we all know most things are made in China, overseas, but check it out, be more aware. It's so important to keep our local economy going. It is very much important to us, so that now I can tell you that the molded parts, the back shell, the bridge, and the fretboard are made in Connecticut. The necks have been made in the Midwest, but all of our necks now are being made in Norfolk, Connecticut. We make a violin now. The back shell of that violin is being made at Mold Master in Pittsfield. We make a banjo ukulele. We have a tailpiece on that is made in Connecticut and plated in Springfield, Massachusetts. So we take that seriously, and I hope there's a message there. Look around you. Get to know where things are, where materials, parts, source for products that you may or may not be using. Or if you're a service, who can you go to for advice? use your community. But it's really, really important to us, and I think to a lot of people, that the instruments that we make have a story, and they're from this area. The story goes beyond. We use a CNC wood shop in Norfolk, Connecticut called Kingsland and Company. It's also a husband and wife team. And what they've done in the past, their business has been built on making one-of-a-kind installations for very fancy homes. Very dramatic staircases, wood moldings, and really amazing stuff. And so they never made things repetitively. They never made things over and over. In fact, they didn't know how to bill for it. But we went to them and said, gee, your work is superb. Could you make parts for us? And so not only are we trying to stay local, but we've given a business an opportunity, and thankfully they were willing, to open up an income stream and create a new business for themselves, because now they have a regular income from us. And they make these over and over and over, our necks and our some of our soundboards. And so that's kind of neat too. We've sort of helped another business in our process. We've done that. We work closely with Jim Lovejoy in Sheffield. A lot of you know the Lovejoys. We rent space from them. That's where we do all of our finishing. And that's been a great relationship, to be able to work together and add to each business and resource from one another. So just a wonderful thing to be able to share. Our environment is another thing that's been important to us. We have 40 solar panels on our building. So this is an aside, just sort of fun things about us. We also, when we make something, we want it to be as sustainable and environmentally friendly as we could be. So not only do we make something here, but our electricity is all generated by the sun on most of the days. And we actually have taken down, we have solid bodies. We also build a short scale electric base now, which our son helped us to develop. And we have a solid body electric fluke also. And some of that comes from trees that we actually have felled and kiln dry. And so we really do know where we're sourcing things. And so that's really important. So let's see. Another thing that's really interesting when you're talking about business, and you're thinking about your business, think about collaborating. For instance, we have a laser machine in our shop. So it was a big investment to have a laser machine, and we're always thinking to ourselves, there's a service there that we can have. So as a business, you don't have to start fresh. You don't have to buy all the equipment and get started. You want to open up your, find out what doors can be open to you and search out where you might be able to get something done, and utilize other resources, again, staying local, because there's a lot of great businesses around here that we can all work together. And I think that's just something to think about as you think about business. Also, knowing about business, and as you think about running a business, it's good to understand when you go in to understand costs of things. And one of the interesting things is, again, to track back a little bit to Made in the USA, most of what we have, our tangible goods, are not made here. And so you go into a store, and you go to a big department store, I won't say a name, and there's this classic, I bought this sweater, and they were giving it away. Because you got it on 50% off, you got the 30% scratch off, and then that day they were giving you 5% more, and you think, oh my gosh, it said it was $70 and it was $35 and I took it home for $5 or $7. And you think, how can they make money? But the truth is that in many cases they're getting a full markup on what you're taking. They're made overseas, and so the costs are very low and they're built up by the time they get here, and they never have sold for the regular price that's on that tag. And I think that that's really, really important here. So we don't, to go along with that, we don't really understand the value of goods anymore. It's very hard to figure that out. And so when you are buying something, and some people say, well, if I buy local, it's a little more expensive. It's not always the case if you really do a little bit of research. But the truth is it does cost a little bit more to make things here. We actually, our banjo, we have a banjo ukulele, and the banjo head is a Remo hand drum. And Remo is the foremost in percussion in the world. And they liked the design so well that Mr. Remo Belli himself said, what can I do to help you? And he said, well, we can't use your drum if it's going to be made in China. So we pay a fair amount extra for it, but they make it in their facilities out west in the U.S. just for us. And again, I'm a little bit repetitive on it, but it's just to get you thinking about how important it is for us to be making things here. And going into a big connection to Berkshire's, which is why you're all here and how you're all here, is keeping that flow of money here. We're making things in our space, and yet we're going out locally to pay for goods, services, parts, material, and we're keeping that money flowing as much as possible within our community, which is important because that's going to be jobs and support for all of us. Every time you're purchasing something from a chain or something that's not made here, that money can filters out. And so that's just been a big thing that's been important to us and to our business. When you think about business and think about what would be important, an important message is to believe in yourself and be true to yourself. Believe in the product or service that you're offering. So don't try to get yourself into something that, well, it sounds like a good idea, I'll do it. You have to be in hook, line, and sinker and be excited about what you're going to make, what you're going to build, what you're going to offer. You have to believe in you, because that's what's going to sell it. And then you have to market. You have to market you, and you have to put yourself out there. You have to have that courage. Again, it takes a lot of courage. When my husband came home and said, I've decided I'm going to make ukuleles for a living, I said, you're going to do what? And he said, and Jim and I, my brother, we're going to go, we're going to go into business, in the ukulele business together. And I said, really? And it was scary. And my parents were even more furious because they had 2 children who were adults who were now unemployed, thinking they were going to revive the ukulele. And while you think it's sort of silly, it was a very silly thing. We had friends who told us, gosh, you seem like nice people with your heads on straight, but we just don't get it. But those same people came back to us a few years later when they realized that we were happy. The ukulele is also a happy instrument, and that's been important because each day that we go to work, we feel fulfilled because we're doing something for us. We're making those decisions, and we also know that we're making others happy. We know that it's not just music in people's hands, that it goes to more than that. We know that our instruments, because of So again, what sets a product apart? Because our instrument is not all wood, and wood moves, wood cracks, wood has issues, it becomes an instrument that's much more durable. It's also an instrument that's in some very big hospitals, particularly in Cincinnati, where there are very, very sick children who have very long days in the hospital, and they have music therapists. And they've discovered that our instruments, though we don't say it's okay, can be bleached and wiped down every day because they go in the hands of kids and they have to be very, very careful with germs and so forth. And we know that they're making a difference that way. So our product, and actually this week they're going to be going to, an organization has sent a bunch of our instruments to a homeless facility in San Francisco. They're looking for something, and there's music in the hearts of these people and a way to sort of give them something to do. And so that's kind of interesting. So our product, again, we're not just selling it. There's a lot of heartstrings. There's a lot of care going into everything we make, and there are a lot of people who are enjoying the product, which makes us really happy. Yes, we're selling them, but that's the bottom line is the stories over and over of what our product or your service or product does. The best part is if you put something out there and you work at it, to suddenly hear how well it works for somebody. What you guys are doing and designing, the first few people that come and say, wow, that's great, why hadn't we thought of that? Or you start to make something and the rewards are just great, not so much the cash rewards, although that we can't deny that we all have to put food on the table. But there's nothing more rewarding than working really, really hard, going against the tide, and finding out that you can make your way. And so I sort of end there and open up for opportunities to ask questions. Marketing, something we have to do a lot of, and how do you market yourself and so forth. I don't know, does anybody have any questions?
All right, let's get started again. So I just wanted to start by touching on some terms that came up in Phyllis's discussion or presentation, and I wanted to make sure everybody knew what they were. So who could tell me what a prototype is, based on what you know?
The type before the final product.
So something that you're kind of testing out, right? So it's the first, what would you say it is?
Actually, the first few. It could be the first one, such as the prototype I brought to you today. So it's and usually made by hand, it's whatever. It's the beginning, the example, or the sample.
So what would you use a prototype for?
Possibly as a proof of concept.
Okay. What do you use that for? Like,
To possibly attract investors.
so you want to show people, right? If you're talking about a business, you want to show them that you can actually do it, and you can actually do what you're going to say.
And for testing too, to
Yeah.
develop, to make sure that the product is all that you
Right.
have in your mind.
So it could be for marketing, proof of concept, for actually making sure you know how to do what you're doing, to get people excited, right? Or to get them to laugh at you, in Phyllis's case. So some of you might want to think about prototypes. Some of you that have a product in mind, you might want to think about what would your prototype be. How about commodity? How would you define commodity? We were talking about how if you're starting a business, you can't really think about your product as being a commodity because it has your product. You want to tell the story behind it, so it's not a commodity. So what's a commodity?
Oil,
Oil.
because it's in demand, and we
Okay.
all need it, which is demand.
So an example of a commodity is oil. Has anybody taken economics? So you'd probably talk about commodities in economics. How would you just define them? Michaela, do you have an idea?
No. We didn't really talk about them.
Anybody? Well, so this is not a commodity because it has a story, right? So the opposite of this is a commodity. It's something that you can just change. It's interchangeable. It's like grain, like corn, oil. Those are commodities. Really cheap shirts, those are commodities. They're things that just are sold at the bottom price. They don't really have any story behind them. Is that a good definition?
I think so.
I think the economic definition is more like something that can just be traded as something that doesn't lose value. Like corn, you can keep it in a silo for years, and you can sell it when you want to. And it's not something that's going to degrade. It's something that just is going to hold its value, and you can just trade it as if it was almost like money.
Right.
Income stream? How would you define an income stream? Jump in. Finn, do you have an idea?
Maybe something, I don't know, like, perhaps just the amount of capital that you have that is, like, profit from.
Okay. I think you're making it
going
more
on.
complicated than it needs to be.
Okay.
So, income is money, right?
Mhm.
That's coming in. A stream, think about it like this is your business here. Here's an income stream, here's an income stream, here's an income stream. So if you were at a retail shop, you would have, let's say, shirts, hats, you have like an event where you get people to buy tickets. So those are all income streams. So different ways that you bring in money. Simple as that, right? So for you, what would examples of income streams be?
Well, sales of our instruments, both wholesale and retail. We also have put on events. That's our main. We look at opportunity for other income stream. For instance, how we can use our facility that we have, how we can use some of our equipment, maybe rent it out or rent time. So it's ways to bring in a flow of money.
So when you're looking at a business, you want to know, well, which income stream is the most successful? Like, where do I bring in the most money? Where might I do better? You can kind of, if you know what your different income streams are, then you can analyze how you can do better. Or you could come up with new ideas.
Right.
Like you have not only just instruments, but you have specific different instruments.
And actually, I have a new income stream. Our soundboard wood, we cut on the laser machine the shapes. And so we end up with scrap that's painted. And I just kept looking at this scrap for so long, and I thought, gosh, couldn't we use the scrap on the laser machine and make something out of it? And thus I'm wearing, I think, Fluke, this shape, earrings. So I've taken the scrap and I've finished it and done a lot of prep work, much more. In fact, I thought, oh, this was going to be a great, easy product to make. I'm going to start my own little business on the side. It's not. Again, perseverance, patience, a lot of hard work, because the material was unfinished on the back, because it doesn't need to be finished in here, because there's bracing patterns and all sorts of things, and you can't see in here. But on my earrings, I needed to finish them and then make holes. And when you get to be my age, you can't see very close. So you then struggle to get jump rings and open them up, and you have to start looking to source material for your earrings. And I thought, oh my gosh, I can get all this stuff, and it's in China. And then I thought, well, can I start sourcing USA made jewelry components, and it's very difficult, but I'm close. But in the meantime, I've developed another income stream, and for fun, brought a bunch of my earrings to our trade show, and they were selling like hotcakes. I sold 30 or 35 pair, which was completely unexpected. I just thought, well, I'll show them. So that was fun. I took something we already had and made something else. So now I'm going full speed ahead with it.
So I like that because it goes to the idea of diversification. I don't know if we've talked about that at all before, but do you want to talk about how you've kind of changed your business over time? Because you started by just making one type of instrument, and then
Right.
what happened?
So we were making the fluke, and then we have a flea, which is more of a pineapple shape ukulele. And the feeling was suddenly everybody, as I said, was starting to make ukuleles. So there was a sense that maybe the banjo could be, a banjo ukulele could happen, because banjos are 5-string, a little more complicated, although there's always been a banjo ukulele, so it's easy to play, but they're heavy because around the heads they have all this metal tuning stuff, and that also means they're more expensive. So ours weighs nothing because it doesn't have those tuning pegs, so it's a little bit innovative. And we thought that that would diversify our line, and it has. It's become a very, very popular product, but it's still in the ukulele world. And we get tired of saying aloha as much as it is fun, and Hawaii's a great place. Gosh, we really need to stretch because everybody's making ukuleles. Ours are different. In fact, before I move on, product design. My husband was brilliant in the fact that not only is it shaped differently, but here is a really important thing. This is the headstock, is what they call this part where the tuners are. Most times, next time you look at a guitar, ukulele, whatever, it's closed. It doesn't have an opening here, and most of the tuning pegs are coming out the back. So when you see a ukulele orchestra, and your back's, the stage is way far away, thinking of marketing and thinking about how you stand out, you can't tell if two people sitting next to each other, one is playing an $8,000 Kamaka and one is playing a $100 whatever. But you can always see ours because it stands out. And I think that's an important message as you think about marketing. What makes your product stand out? This you can see from far away. We get a kick out of it every time we see pictures of groups because, there is a fluke, there's flea. It's got to be our instrument because this is the headstock.
Not to mention the shape.
Right, of course, absolutely. But in terms of diversifying, with so many people making ukuleles, the sense was in order to stay ahead, we needed to look at the other instruments on the market. When we started making ukuleles, I found it fascinating that people would come into our shop that were friends and say, "You make ukuleles, so you must be able to fix my daughter's violin." Okay, that's possible. And so my husband would take that violin and he became fascinated. And more violins would come in because violins are very complex. And a lot of those that are coming out of China at this point it's difficult. They don't hold their tunes, the tuning pegs move. In any case, he was enamored with the violin and took many years and created, and I didn't bring it, but it's a very thin, his own design, again using the composite of an injection molded back and a wood soundboard, and that's called the Cricket. And the idea was to make an instrument. There are people, a lot of players out there who have invested heavily. Violins can be very, very expensive, anywhere from several $100s to tens of thousands of dollars. And so the idea is, could we key in on a population that either is beginning, and this would be an affordable beginning instrument, or people that were already playing that can't. We have a customer who's a composer and a fabulous player out in California And he was hiking and camping, and he was with his wife, and they were at the bonfire, and everybody's playing music. But he didn't have his violin with him because there's no way he could take it because of the value. So he said, as soon as we get home, I'm going to find a violin that I can take with me to travel with and to camp with. And that's how he discovered us. And so again, trying to find a niche, using materials and parts and being innovative with what we've got going and things in place, and then, oh, there you go. There's the violin. And expanding the product line so that now we're not just talking to ukulele stores, we're talking to orchestra stores who may actually be delighted to take our ukuleles in but haven't heard about us before. This one's kind of a fun one because I think it also tells a story. I think I may have, in passing, mentioned our oldest son is a junior mechanical engineering student at UMass Amherst. And like his dad, is extremely innovative and wanted to help and has been helping us for the last couple of years. And he came up with that timber bass. It's a solid body, all electric, short scale bass. And that's our newest product and very, very exciting. When we went to the trade show this year, it was really, really fun. It was played a lot. And so that's opening us actually into the guitar market. And that's been great. And then what's not pictured here because we only have one, but Dale went ahead and decided, okay, next thing is the cello. So he carved by hand a prototype of a cello and brought it to the trade show with us just to see what people would think. And again, going back to what Alice was talking about, we didn't intend to sell it. We wanted to get feedback. This was the music industry of the world. We have the audience who can tell us what they need, what they're looking for. Is it something they'd ever consider using? So, so the two things that we're actually doing, and here we've been doing this for 18 years, but we can't rest. It only gets harder, and that's not to be discouraging. But the Firefly, which is the banjo uke, is so popular that this year we're going to be looking at making a whole new line of them. We may add a 5-string. We're going to be looking at new drum heads and expanding that line. So I guess all of this is to just let you know that it can always be evolving. You know, when you're thinking about ideas, you have to start from somewhere. You have to create an idea, and then you have to work really hard and keep at it. And then there's another area that we probably haven't talked about too much, and I want to watch time, but marketing. And I think that it's important and a good point in terms of the fact that we sometimes sell ourselves short. You want to figure out what is your value. You have a value in a product, correct? So your product costs something because your parts cost money, your labor costs money, your time costs money. Does anybody know what the term overhead means when it refers to business? Any?
Everything, all your expenses that make it possible for you to conduct business, whether it's a service or a product. So it's your rent and your electricity and your office supplies and your materials and your education.
Exactly. Everything that it costs to make your business happen is an overhead. And so you have to pay for that, and I think as we think about business, realize that when you make something, you have to understand, and you'll be talking about that, I'm sure, if you haven't already, costs. So it's costs of tangible things, but there are other costs that are involved. I mean, when you think of a store or a business like ours, every time we ship, people don't realize it, but do you know we pay for UPS to come to our building every week on top of paying for shipping? So we pay for electricity, we pay, and there are fees that if you order a ukulele and you say that you live at 123 South Main Street, but you forgot to put down that you live at apartment 3, I get charged $12 for that, and I can't pass that on to my customer. So there are lots of, there are lots of fees. People don't realize costs that are involved with running a business, even a small business. In terms of marketing, selling yourself, you have to feel really passionate about who you are and what your product or service is, and to be able to put yourself out there. And that's hard. That's a really hard thing to do. And you're vulnerable. And if you believe, you really believe in you, and you believe in what you're making, you can tell your story and make it happen. And so, on top of the overhead you talked about, there's marketing, there's advertising, there's printing. Is it in media? Is it, for us, we are worldwide. So we have to consider advertising in national magazines in the music industry. But we also love to support local. And one of the places that we've had, the Shopper's Guide, it's just a nice local, we've done some advertising there. It's a great local publication. I like to go through it cover to cover every week. But Berkshire Magazine is a wonderful magazine, and what happens there is those people see an ad, they're in bed and breakfasts and inns all over. And it's great because we'll say to people as they walk in, how'd you hear about us? And that's really important. If somebody buys your product, you want to know how did they get to you? And so they'll say, well, we were up at Porches, and we were opening up the magazine that was on the bedside table, and we thought this sounded interesting. And that's happened time and time again.
So that's like that's like market research that you continue to do all the time.
All the time. It's so important to find out about it. In fact, hopefully, some of your takeaway from this meeting, or from these groups of classes, is for you to go out and be better consumers. And try and figure out what's made here. How is it made? Do you like it? Because the people that you buy it from, they want to know. I don't know how many of you, when you're on the internet, look at all the opportunities to give feedback when you've purchased something online. As a business, you want that feedback. You want to find out what people like and what they don't. The good and the bad and the ugly, we say, is really, really important for you to be able to sell your product well. And
So-
go ahead.
Well, I just want to know if these guys have questions that came up. But you
Sure, no, that's fine.
Where do you sell your ukuleles? Do you have like storefronts, or do you sell local shops, or just through your website?
A bunch of places. It's a great question. We actually never had a website until 2 years ago, when we felt that it was a necessity because we couldn't be everywhere. So we have always sold wholesale all over the world. But what's interesting, in the last year, our dollar here in the US is considered strong. And I can't get into a full-length economics course because I'm not great at that anyway, but we have a strong dollar now, which means that if we send to another country, today it's costing much more for that country to import our product. So that's been a problem for us since our dollar has gotten stronger. But there's another reason that our exporting, so we're not shipping all over the world as much, that's fallen off, is because China has another advantage. They can freely send product everywhere. We can't. When we send product out overseas as the United States, it usually means that the people who are importing our product are paying some sort of import duty or VAT. And that makes the playing field a little bit more uneven. So it's very difficult for the US. We make great products here. It's very hard for us to export because it's more costly.
But that's very important, what Alice just wrote on the blackboard. When you're selling wholesale, you're going to sell to people who are going to have to cover their costs and mark up the product to sell at a higher price to their customers. So if you can sell things at retail in your market, if you can sell only those items, you can charge the retail price and enjoy the benefit of the extra markup.
Exactly.
So can we kind of define retail? How would you define retail? First,
Where do you pay retail price?
At a retail store,
what does a retail store do?
they sell directly to the customer.
Okay, so selling right to the customer, the end user, the person that's gonna play the ukulele. That's a retailer. So they have to cover the cost of buying the ukulele from the ukulele company, and then they also have to pay their rent and all that overhead we talked about, their own marketing. So that's why they're gonna charge, how much would a retailer charge for a fluke?
So a retailer would charge for a standard fluke, the one that I brought, is $215.
And how much do you sell for wholesale, for like an average wholesale order?
It's not, most products that you buy that are not made here have a markup that's what they call a full markup. So if you're paying $100, the store paid $50 or less. For our business, it's not a full markup. There's something called a B mark, so it's less than that. Or it's, in other words, you don't get the margin with our product that you would in many stores that are selling lots of items like shirts, clothing, whatever. They're gonna get a full markup, so it's 50% or 100%. In ours, that doesn't happen because our costs are too high, and we want our instruments to remain cost-effective, affordable.
So-
It's very hard on the wholesale level for us to make what we need to make. And so we needed to pick up some slack because we also knew that there were people who wanted our products that couldn't get them locally. But one thing we've always done is we've never ever undercut our retailer. And what that means is if Alice is selling at $215, but she has a sale and she decides she's gonna take $20 off, so that would be $195. But Michaela comes in and she wants to buy it. She decides, well, I'm gonna go to the manufacturer, maybe they'll sell it to me a little less because they're making it. We will never, ever undercut our retailer. You buy it locally. You support your local dealer. We will only sell it for full price and full shipping. I don't know if that resonates at all, but that's really, really important, exactly what you were saying. You don't want to compete with your dealers. In fact, when somebody comes to us that wants to sell our instruments, we're very, very careful. We want to know, do you have a brick and mortar store? What's that sound like? What's a brick and mortar store?
One that like prices don't change that.
Well, it means when we talk about a brick and mortar store, it's very important because they're becoming dinosaurs. That's the store you physically walk into and buy.
So it's on Main Street or Railroad Street.
But imagine today, there are a lot of non-brick and mortar. People are selling from home in their bunny slippers because they can do it all online. And we don't want everybody selling on eBay our product or online because we only have one price sheet. That's the other thing. There are lots of different pricing, and I don't have examples of it. But when something comes out of China, you can bet that there are, and we've seen this happen, we know this happens. This side of the room, you may buy X number of pieces, and so we're going to give you guys a special deal. We can't give you guys, for the same product, we can't treat you the same. We give them the special deal, but not you. And this happens all the time. We're very proud of the fact, and I think when people make things here from, again, this is from what we've seen, there's not all sorts of pricing. We know the value of all of the parts of our products. We know the people who made them, we know where they were made, and they all have a distinct cost. And that's what we use to create a price for our instruments. So it's a real value.
And a good example would be when Maddie Elling was here. Maddie Elling sells her kimchi to Guido's, and she, on Saturdays, sells at the farmer's market. And she's very careful to be sure that she sells at the farmer's market at the same retail price as Guido's, so she doesn't place in jeopardy the consistency of that wholesale business. Because wholesale business, somebody can order 20 jars of kimchi every week for 52 weeks, and at the farmer's market you can only sell 1 or 2 jars to everybody. And it's the same way in your business. The consistency of people who are reordering every day
Right.
become valuable customers.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Do you use reps to get wholesale accounts, or do you contact accounts directly and do all the negotiations yourselves?
Good question, and that would, what you're alluding to is distributors. So that's another level. So we are the manufacturer, and then the manufacturer goes directly to the retailer, but there's the distributor. A lot of places use a distributor, and that distributor, it means, if we did that, that our instrument would cost more because that distributor has to make money. There's got to be a price in there for them to go out and market your product. So you build in more overhead, thank you. And so we opted not to do that. We
That's
go
also-
directly.
That's also only appropriate for certain kinds of products because your product is so special.
Right.
And you would get a distribution if you wanted to make massive quantities.
Right.
Which if you wanted then to take Magic Fluke and knock yourselves off in China, then you would get a distributor. But as it is, you have your price and you want to keep it at that price.
Exactly.
So.
And lots of times when we talk about commodities, commodities are many times sold through a distributor, because basically everything is the same, so that distributor can sell many, many more in their local market.
And the distributors can be good. If you've got the ability to pay that, a distributor can be a great thing. I think Big Elm is now in a distribution situation, and it's been wonderful because they were growing really fast. And so suddenly it's how do you grow really fast and make this wonderful beer and get out and sell it and market it and get it to where it needs to be, when you can have a distributor who has a huge customer list who can do all that for you. So, absolutely, it depends on the business. Now, I will say the one area that we do work with distributors a little bit is overseas. And that is because communication can be a problem. So, for instance, while we have a couple of people in the UK, we really are sort of honing in on this one guy who's a distributor, and he's taking in most of our instruments and selling them well and selling them to dealers. Now, he's not getting any special price. It's just we're not getting other people to buy it. We're funneling business to him, so that there's an even playing field for anybody who takes in our instruments from him. Then those stores have a set price because he's setting the price to get it overseas and so forth, which is very expensive right now. Very, very expensive.
So that product that you sell here in California would be at one price, but there is substantially more costs to get that product to the United Kingdom or to France.
Absolutely.
Or to Asia.
Absolutely, huge cost. Just the shipping alone, if we ship something from here to California, depending on how many in a box and so forth, it can be $8 to $10 an instrument. Sometimes we can get it down to about $7, depending on how we pack and so forth. But we're very sensitive to that because the the store buying is absorbing that cost. We charge that cost, pass that cost of the shipping on to the customer. So we try to get the lowest price to them. But when you're going overseas, you're looking at maybe 20, sometimes $25 per instrument, just for the shipping. And it's difficult. In Australia, for instance, we have an account. They get charged an import fee, which we talked about a little bit ago. But if it's a threshold, if they can have the value under $700 US, they won't have to pay any import fee. So it keeps the cost down. But it's a nightmare for us because our dollar is so different to figure out, you know, it shifts a little, so it has to be under this certain threshold, and it doesn't always stay the same. But also we have to manipulate our invoices a little bit so that he doesn't get hit with an import. And we ship every 4 days sometimes, which is a lot. It adds to our cost. It's actually harder. It's more costly for us to accommodate that. But we could go on, and I hope that there are a few things that you guys are picking up from this. We run a real business. This is how we put food on the table.
Yeah.
Like, do you have a patent on the design?
Great question. We have a design, configuration trademark, and we have it both on the fluke and the flea. And what that is it's filed with the United States government, and it's the design, it's the shape that. But I will, for a minute, let you know that we sold to a very large children's toy piano company 8 years ago, and they were in China. They took them all apart and decided to make them in China.
Decided to make those.
Decided to make the flea ukulele in China without our permission. What's fascinating is the ukulele community throughout the world is growing, but very tight. Those people who are laughing at us have been an amazing group of people. I'm convinced anybody who plays the ukulele is just the best. But the truth is that they got wind of this before we did. And they were all over the internet. They contacted us immediately. And though we had a configuration trademark, in order to go to court with these people, we would have had to fold our business. We would not have been able to afford that. So what my husband and I did, and we're a really great team, we worked and worked on a letter and said, we understand what you're doing. We need to talk. And they did come to us. We had to make a really tough decision. It goes totally against us to think that our product's going to be made in China. But we did enough research to understand that it may not be the first time. And if we were to work with another company, it would give us another layer of protection. So we worked with them, came up with a licensing. However, unfortunately, I think a lot of damage was done because they were on Amazon and they almost lost their ability to sell on Amazon because the ukulele community was horrendous. They bought them, and it was, I mean, they were really harsh and very protective of the fact that they knew we worked very hard. We were flattered, and I'm sure that's not the only reason. But so we have lived all of the stuff I'm talking to you about. We've lived it, and we're not experts. We're still learning. But I hope I've shared enough with you just to make it a little bit interesting. Maybe put something in the back there to think about along your roads. And I welcome and invite all of you anytime to come see our shop. It's really kind of fun. And also ask questions. You know, give us a call. Always happy to talk about ideas. So, and I wish you guys all well in your projects.
Thank you, Phyllis.
Thank you so much.